Hey guys, welcome back to another art video. I'd like to take the point now, dragon is done. So I kind of want to give it a little reflection on the process and the journey that this dragon took us down. And one that was a lot longer than I thought it'd be. One thing I kind of want to talk about is, there's more than one way to doing something. And in this dragon, I kind of showed that, with part one to part two. Part one, I built that body one way, and in part two, I built it completely different. And I thought that was kind of important that I point that out at the beginning of this video to kind of, let you know, either way would work out great. Either way worked. I just chose a different path on the second one. And maybe it was a little bit faster, maybe it's stronger because it has a cardboard base rather than just paper mache. Maybe I didn't have enough layers of paper mache to have that strong enough to hold all the other stuff I put on there. And, I would probably do it the same way I did the first one, just maybe not put all the paper mache on top of it all at once. Clearly that was too much at the moment. So, I think either way would work out fine. I probably would build it either way. It still turned out really good. So with that being said, I feel like it's kind of time to give you a little visual tour of this dragon. This is kind of a fun, important part, understanding what I was thinking as I was painting it and the reasoning for the color choices and finishing touches, that kind of stuff. All right, guys, visual tour. We have the face, part one, of course, the body, part two, and the paint job you'll see in just a minute will be about part three of my video. And in this, I kind of want to talk about some of the finishing touches I did, of course. With the horns here, that's all done with deer antlers. And in some parts of the deer antlers, I actually took the chunk of deer antler and I sanded it down so I can get points. So it wasn't just the end of an antler tip, but it might be other parts of the antler that I could use then too, so I wasn't wasting any part of the deer antler. The eyes, I suppose I could turn it on, huh? I've got electricity running through this with battery pack. So that way the eyes and the nose can glow. And the eyes are reptile eyes that I ordered out of a taxidermy book. I have used shark eyes on my other ones, and I'll show you those later on in the video. And those worked out pretty well for different reasons. The nose, as you can see, I've got lights going on inside there. I decided to put cotton deep in that nose to help make that light glow a little bit more. When that light hits the cotton fibers, it kind of diffuses the light onto other fibers so it can glow a little more. I considered having the cotton come out so it looked like smoke coming out of his mouth or nose. Didn't quite look right, so I didn't do that. All right, we'll head up to the top of the head where I have all these hard little points. Now you saw when I worked on this part and the eyes that I used some sort of clay base. Now that clay is actually a epoxy clay, and epoxy clay dries super hard when you mix the two parts together. And I had some extra chunks left over, and so I thought I'd start putting them up on here, and I actually had to mix more epoxy clay up to finish out all the horns I wanted to do because I really liked how it turned out. But that epoxy clay helps hold that eye socket in place and gives it that good finishing touch that you maybe can't quite get as detailed with this paper mash that I make. So kind of gives a nice detail to finish that part out. That's pretty important. On top of the head, and I had the horns, but also had this little fin-like thing going on that I feel like is a lead into these horn-like structures. All right, it's all just made with the paper, of course. You saw that in the videos. And, they look like horns. They're kind of like tentacles. Not sure what you'd call them. I'm no dragon expert, but they look cool on top of their heads. Coming down the sides, I tried to make it look like there was some sort of scale going on there. I will show later on in the video my other dragons and how I did different types of scales on those. This was the first time I did a scale pattern like this one. Mostly happy with it, You'll see on some of the other ones that maybe it kind of looks different and for each dragon, I think that's okay to have some different things that you learn from and what you like. This one, at the moment, I think I like it pretty good. On top of his back, where his spine is, I put these little wavy columns again, you know, and maybe it means something, maybe it doesn't. I kind of liked how it kind of hides my battery pack for the most part. So if you're down here looking at it, you're not going to see that battery pack. So it kind of was a purpose to hide that a little bit, and then I just brought them down through here. A lot of times on dragons or even dinosaurs, you'll find spikes and other types of things that come off the spine. So this is kind of that similar type of thing. And to kind of talk about the color that I chose on here, I chose this very light white, bright, light blue, grayish tone. So in a nutshell, this I would consider my air or sky dragon. So I want it to blend in with the clouds as much as possible, as if it was flying above and you had a hard time seeing it. So that was what I was thinking in making this. And personally, with my other dragons you'll see in a little bit, I like darker dragons a lot more, but this one did turn out really pretty neat. I'll give it a little turn here. We'll look at the underbelly. Okay, I've got this like armor plating, much like you'll see on snakes. It seems like a protection thing. The scales are different on the bottom of a snake, and you kind of see that with dragons. Whether you find pictures online or watch other TV shows or whatever, that's kind of how you'll see a dragon have that. I call it like plating. It comes through the neck area or their underbody. And added just a little bit of color tone. I wanted to keep it pretty light because I don't want this to be seen from the ground if it was flying above you. Look like the clouds flying above. Just dawned on me. I forgot to talk about a couple things. The teeth. I had those teeth in when I first started. Some of them came out as I worked on it. I would highly recommend, before painting, pulling those teeth, because there was a lot of work scraping that paint off of the teeth. I did that with the horns. Horns cleaned off all right, but the parts of the antler here that I shaved or sanded down, the paint stuck to a lot harder than it did the part that's original deer antler outside edging. That scraped off pretty well. But if you get the opportunity and you have the teeth in, and it's hard to get around them, like I had a hard time getting around them, you might want to take the teeth out and just glue them in later. That's what I did with the bottom teeth here. Also, some might have good questions about this one right here. So as I said earlier, I do taxidermy for fun on the side. I have 2 of these made up for me to use, and they're super helpful because you can then spin your dragon as you're working on it. And you'll see that in my video. It's a huge deal. It really does help to be able to move things around as you're working on it, but it still be stable enough that it doesn't fall somewhere else. Same with the mounting bracket. That's off taxidermy deer heads and other mounts like that. Works really, really well. Some of my other dragons don't have this, and they hang up just fine. I used other methods, of course, but that's probably the most solid way of doing this. At some point, I'll put felt on the back of this to cover all that up. This will go over top of the felt, so this looks perfectly clean and nice. But for the moment right now, it's still mounted to this. So, yeah, having something like this really makes a difference. All right, guys, up next, time to talk about all the dragons that came before the one you just saw, like that one. So, quick visual tour of my other dragons in my possession. I have made now 4 dragons total. This is the first one I ever made. I had another student help me make this one years ago. And this one kind of has a feeling of a water type of dragon, one that would live in swampy areas, because it looks like it's got a fin on his back to help swim. We did open mouth. In this one again, we had reptile eyes. And this one's got an open mouth. And it's quite similar to what I've done in the past, but this one's all done with paper mache base and a cloth outer coating with glue, which gives a really hard shell, and you can kind of create these scales that stick up by folding the cloth. So it's a different feel and look to this one altogether. Now the second dragon I made here is very similar to that last one. We used a lot of paper mache and cardboard as a base underneath, and then did a lot of finishing touches with cloth and glue. You can see the scales, I took a different route in folding the cloth and sticking it down on top, so it had a more of a plated look for scale. A little bit different feel, different look. I liked how it turned out. This is the first time I used deer antlers for teeth, so it kind of gives it more of a real feel there. And this one is the first time I used an eye that was not a reptile eye. This one is a shark eye. Now, my shark eyes come with a clear back, and all I gotta do is paint whatever color I think I'm using on the back of that to help match my dragon. So I chose red, of course, because of the red color on my dragon, which really pulls a lot of that together quite nicely. This dragon is my fire dragon. All right, now this is my third dragon I made, and you'll see a lot of things coming together based on those first two into this one, and the start of other things. First, I'll start off with those plated scales on the sides. We got the nice armor scales coming down the front of the neck like the reptiles would have, like snakes. My shark eye, the painted backing to match the color of the dragon. I went with a Medusa look on top of his head with all these tentacle horns coming off. And this is the first time I used my paper mache on one of these projects. As you can see, I got a different styled nose on this one compared to those other ones. Looks more similar to that last one I just made. Inside the mouth, I became much more specific on how the gums and the tongue all flowed and came together to look more realistic. Now, I chose this one to face downward because it looks at me when I'm sitting in my chair or desk at school. Pretty fun idea there. And this one I refer to as my ice dragon. Just so everybody knows, I do make other creatures like this mammoth. And, you know, I prefer dragons because they are much more open to interpretation, where something like this is much more specific because we actually know what they do look like. Wow, that was a lot of talking. Hope the explanation helps you understand why I made the choices I made on that dragon. Thanks for watching.